Welcome to the Winged Wheel Podcast, the number one source for news, analysis, and discussion on the Detroit Red Wings, the NHL, and all things hockey. Here are your hosts, Ryan Hanna, Brad Crisco, and Evan Lopsinger.
One of the most annoying things in hockey is getting goalied. Like whether you're playing or watching your favorite team get goalied, like there's just nothing you can do. If a guy's losing his mind in the net and just stopping everything, or you're staring at him going, that's a freak, what are we supposed to do? You have like no recourse. Unless you're the head coach of the Detroit Red Wings. And all you can do purely through catharsis and just stirring the pot a little bit, you say after the game, great goalie, he's special. I can see why he turned down the 88, referring to the $88 million that Igor Shesterkin turned down. Great agent.
Sometimes you got to fight dirty.
It's so funny. It doesn't matter. It doesn't change anything. It was extremely funny to see Rangers fans. A lot of them took the joke and then they called Lalonde some names, which were objectively hilarious. And they took everything in stride. But, some people were like, oh, that's tampering. It's not tampering. No, it's extremely funny. And if that happened to the Red Wings, I'd laugh, but it'd be somewhat annoying too. But that's just pure pot stirring. That's just like, well, we couldn't score on you, so I'm going to do this because that's all I have.
Well, anybody with eyes who was watching that game probably had the same thought.
Yeah. What were you supposed to do against Igor Shesterkin? I don't think Detroit played 3 perfect periods, but there were 2 where I was like, this should be going in. This should be going in.
The second period, especially, he had about 3 that I thought were surefire goals.
Yeah. That guy deserves all the money and more. And he's going to get paid it. And I would bet by the New York Rangers, but man, if he goes to free agency, he is getting paid. Parents, if you have a goaltender playing in minor hockey, first off, Godspeed, because that's very expensive. But just remember, highest earning potential, maybe.
To be fair, though, if Shesterkin gets $92 million, I still don't know if that makes up for the minor hockey costs as a goalie.
Oh, it's nuts.
But you do make it up in unlimited free beer league ice time when you're retired.
Yeah, but sometimes they'll be like knocking on your door and blowing up your phone when you're trying to go to, like every single day. You'll never know peace as a goalie.
This is true.
That's why you play a lazy position, like Evan and I, defense.
Yep.
Where when you get older, no one expects you to skate anymore. Folks, welcome to the Winged Wheel Podcast, here to talk to you about all things Detroit Red Wings hockey, the world of the NHL, and lots more. I'm one of your hosts, Ryan Hanna.
I'm Brad Crisco.
And I'm Evan.
On this episode of the Winged Wheel Podcast, we're going to be talking about Detroit's only game they've played between last episode and now, a 4-1 road loss to the New York Rangers, which didn't really seem as lopsided as it ended up. So we'll break that game down beyond just Igor Shesterkin being Igor Shesterkin. We'll also talk about Justin Holl and his potential revenge tour, comeback to the Red Wings, whatever you want to call it, alongside Simon Edvinsson and that pair finding a little bit of a stride here. Some movement on the Red Wings roster, some notes about the Red Wings in terms of Marco Kasper and his physical element on display with the Grand Rapids Griffins. And then we are actually joined this episode by Daniella Bruce of the Detroit Red Wings and the Detroit Tigers to get her thoughts and impressions on this upcoming Detroit Red Wings season, before a couple other updates about Bally Sports Detroit and the new name they're going to have, and then NHL news before we get into overtime. Before all that, I want to let you know about a couple things. First, the Winged Wheel Podcast is almost primarily supported by our Patreon supporters, patreon.com/Winged Wheel Podcast. If you want to support the show, you get access to some really great benefits like our Patreon exclusive Discord, all of our bonus episodes, and any additional bonus content which we record. You're also automatically entered into all of our giveaways. For example, we give away 2 tickets to every Detroit Red Wings home game, the vast majority going directly to our Patreon supporters. So again, patreon.com/Winged Wheel Podcast if you want to join the so-called Dub Club, as Steve Dangle dubbed it a while back, and that kind of stuck. Additionally, Hot Stove Stories Rounding the Bases with Mike Tirico is on Tuesday, January 14th. It's going to feature fantastic guests like Jason Benetti, Dan Dickerson, Len Kasper. It is a really, really great event. It's happening on the morning of January 14th. Go to jamiedanielsfoundation.org to find out more and get your tickets. It is a really, really worthwhile cause, and having been to these events in the past, you won't want to miss it. So the Red Wings schedule coming into the start of the season was never going to be easy. And that Rangers game, it was almost hard to watch a 4-1 loss come to fruition because you're like, I really think at moments here, this was the best Detroit has played so far through their very early 3 games of the season. Not for a full 60 minutes. A third, they kind of got momentum killed, like shut down, clamped down on, that kind of thing. But through 2 periods, I thought they were really, really good. But man, New York is just the better team.
Shesterkin is part of the New York Rangers, which makes that statement accurate. First 2 periods, that should have been a pretty comfortable lead for the Red Wings. They're a team that we talked about all offseason is probably going to struggle to generate offense a little more this year than they did last year, just because of natural regressions and some key losses on the roster. And they generated a decent amount here, but it just wasn't enough. That's one of those games where you just got to keep doing what you're doing and pray. Because what was the one play? It was Comfer who got a cross-ice pass from Raymond backdoor. Looked like an easy tap-in, and you just look up and Shesterkin's got it in his glove, no rebound. Just, yeah. It's frustrating because easy offense doesn't come to this team. Like, they're a team that has to work for their goals, and last year they did a great job of it. And this game, they were doing a great job of it up until the 3rd period, and they were only able to drop 1.
Yeah, I think from a Red Wings perspective, being down 2-1 going into the 3rd on the road against a team that you've mostly played better than, you take that position 10 times out of 10. They definitely seem to run out of steam and get locked down in the 3rd period. But by and large, I thought the game was an improvement over what we've seen thus far this season from the Red Wings.
To break it down, goal scoring started with one Alexis Lafreniere, who's getting rumors of a Raymond level extension coming up here, north of $8 million over 8 years. So, not that you like to see Eastern Conference foes get better if you're the Red Wings, but in terms of the whole Kakko Lafreniere saga, it is a little bit easing to the hockey mind that at least Lafreniere is becoming somewhat of what we expected him to be. But anyways, Lafreniere opens scoring off a pass from Panarin. And then right at the end of the 1st period, really, really great play where Dylan Larkin scored right at the buzzer. But the play started, nice pass by Patrick Kane back to the point for Justin Holl, who jumped into the play, went down low, and fed Dylan Larkin right at the buzzer. It was a buzzer beater goal, and you were looking, you're like, oh my God, Justin, like we've been saying, Justin Holl, he looked steady. That was a great play by Justin Holl. And Detroit went into the 2nd period tied.
There was a part of me that when he got that drop from Kane and didn't immediately walk into it with like 2-3 seconds left on the clock, my initial reaction was upset. Like, dude, what are you doing? You're almost out of time. And 2 seconds later, I'm thinking, oh, sorry, Justin. Like, great play. Phenomenal play.
Fantastic play. And I think that carried a lot of momentum for the Red Wings. Yeah, Chris Kreider scored in the 2nd period on the power play, but that was late in the 2nd period. And up until that point, like that was a big momentum killer for me. I thought, wow, if Detroit can just get 1 through here, I could see them carrying that momentum through the game because the defense wasn't terrible at that point. And funny enough, we talk about Justin Holl, he looked good. It was his high sticking penalty that sent Detroit to the penalty kill, and that's where Chris Kreider scored, which was unfortunate.
It was a fluke high stick, though. That's just one of those ones where nobody did anything wrong. Just wrong place, wrong time. Unfortunate.
Yeah, there have been a lot of high sticks to start the year. Like, guys haven't been responsible with their sticks.
I love that.
Season. You love it? That's the kind of violence you love?
Give me all types.
He's just upset there's no backswings.
That's right.
What's wrong with you? No, but how many times has Dylan Larkin been sticked in the face? And I think Dylan Larkin has high sticked a couple people accidentally as well.
Hey, early season rust comes in all forms.
Yeah, and it breeds entertainment. And unfortunately for the Red Wings, it was automatic on that power play. Like, it just happened so fast. But that 2nd period, the 1st period at points, and the 2nd period especially, like Detroit had momentum. They had pressure. They were controlling the puck. Like, through and through, that was the best period of hockey when you were watching that and saying, no matter what the result of this game is, that's where the optimism comes from for this team to be able to kind of put it together. And you think if they can steal some games against better teams and play like that against teams that they should beat, that's the formula to get them to the 91 potentially or more points that they got last season. I saw the same thing there in that was inspiring for me over the course of the season. That does not make for a win, though, because by the third period, it's like the Rangers woke up and, Kreider's goal right at the end of the second, Riley Smith's goal closer to the first part of the third. And then after that, it just the Red Wings really had nothing.
This was the fear going into the season with the offense, was the regression in terms of the percentages. The third period goal that Lyon let in was ugly. He was way off his angle on that one. So the goalie doesn't make the key save when you need it, and the shooting percentage isn't riding as high as it was last year. I understand, Shesterkin. This is going to be probably, hopefully, the most extreme example of it this season. But again, this is a team that is not going to score easy goals. When they get chances, they have to bury them. To repeat what they did last year, they're going to have to try to carry that high shooting percentage. So in a game like this, where it is below average, they get goalied. They don't really have the horses at any position to overcome that right now.
There are positive aspects to this game that I want to focus more on, but I do want to acknowledge, I do think Alex Lyon was a little rusty this game. To be expected, he didn't play to start the season. It's just the third game. Talbot so far has had the best performance. I thought Lyon on Lafreniere's goal was it was an east-west goal, and he got beat, and it was a good pass by Panarin, and Lafreniere did a good job to bury it. I do think Lyon wishes he had that one back because he was close enough where he could have had it. But yeah, you're right. That late goal, the angle wasn't good on there. And to me, that's just Lyon being rusty. So I'm not concerned, but they'll want him to kind of get going too, because like we said with Talbot, has looked good so far, but it's early and you never know how things are going to settle in, and you don't want someone his age taking on, 50 plus games. The idea is that this committee can be a committee. So nothing to be sounding any alarm bells over, but that's just a little something that I noticed so far.
No alarm bells with the goaltending. There are still several big issues that were arising in this game with the team.
Well, let's talk about the power play, because I know that's something you noted, 0 for 4, and they kind of looked a little bit cement footy, not really able to get set up, and whether that's through the Rangers and their effective kind of breakup of that process. But the Red Wings power play so far, I don't think has been that threatening, and they're going to need it to be good if they are going to have that kind of offense replacement based on what they lost over the offseason.
They were stationary. We've seen this for years. When the Red Wings power play is bad, nobody's moving. You watch, and again, I'm using a lot of extreme examples today, but you watch the Oilers power play. 3-4 guys are on the move at all times. It's not just McDavid. They are rotating. They are moving. They are forcing the defense to shift. And hockey is a game of mistakes, right? You don't see a goal without someone on the ice making a mistake 98% of the time. If you don't move, it's very easy for the defense to not make a mistake because they don't have to do anything. They're just clog the middle, take away the cross-ice pass, and they'll let you have the point shot whenever you want it. And especially with Detroit's power play in particular, though elite as he is, Kane is not a shooting threat on the right flank. So if your shooting threat's coming from the top of the key and the left flank and nobody's moving, it is the easiest power play in the world to defend. Because you can just leave Kane open there. You can run your diamond and everything is effectively shut down. Last year when the Red Wings power play was clicking, people were moving. Raymond was bouncing in and out of net front, low. Larkin was in and out of the bumper, flying around the top of the key. Kane was going high to low. Like, there was a lot of stuff happening, which absolutely did not happen at any point in that game.
It's early, and you've seen ebbs and flows, like heavy ebbs and flows with this power play and special teams. And you have a different look too. It's not the same personnel. So I think it's okay to kind of wait and see, but it's the bad habits creeping in that you watch and you're like, you hope that once they find their chemistry, the trust and the vision and the kind of sense as to where your teammates are on the ice, even if you're not looking directly at them, that's the kind of thing you want to find. I know you use extreme examples, Brad, but in general, that's the kind of thing that allows you to move around a little bit better. And not everyone's going to be like Sedin level clairvoyance or McDavid level like anticipation, things like that. But the kind of dynamic movement, especially as modern penalty kills are becoming more aggressive, challenging a lot more for, I think percentage-wise, you do better that way. And the Florida Panthers are going to set the tone, being the Cup winners, and they do that a lot. You have to be able to move around and be dynamic.
And getting back to the bigger picture, again, with all the conversations we had in the offseason of how is this offense going to replicate what they did last year when a lot of the warning signs about regression were there, I don't feel like the bottom six had a scoring chance this game. I'm sure there's probably a couple that I'm forgetting, but no serious ones, and certainly not many of them. So they can't let the power play run cold because they are not getting anything that resembles depth scoring right now.
I want to talk about the bottom six. I want to get to Holl and Edvinsson for a little bit of positive talk here, but I want to talk about the bottom six because, we talked about them last episode, and I got a few notes from people saying, you missed this really good player, a couple of good plays from Veleno, or this from, Fischer or Rasmussen, Kopline, whatever it was. And you look, and I think it was fair. Like, I think maybe the broad spectrum, the bottom six was just, bad, or you're missing this from them. You're missing those kind of the minutia of what is going well. But you also think about, who people are clamoring to move out for Kasper. And through 3 games, I have heard every single bottom six player and some top six players, honestly. And that's not a sign that everyone's right, but it is a sign of these guys are all being held to the context of who is waiting in the wings. And it's Kasper right now, but not long after that, it's going to be the Danielsons. It's going to be MBNs in the future. It's going to be Mazur. And so I don't think it's unfair for people to say you want more from the bottom six because you're eager to see what's happening in Kasper. Is it completely fair to the player or whatever? Maybe not, but yeah, I think there's a good case to be made for a lot of those guys to say, as you said really well last episode, Brad, you're not trying to punt them from the team or, boot them into the sun, but you sit in the press box for a few games and you see how Kasper does in that spot. And you kind of cycle through to see who can hold their position. I don't think the bottom six has been a downright travesty by any means. So I think that's extremely fair to kind of point out in their defense. But at the same time, there haven't been standouts to the point where those clamoring for Kasper to step in Berggren's spot or, Mott or Veleno or whoever else. I can see the justification for any one of those iterations.
100%. The point I want to make with the bottom six, and yeah, they are massively overpaid for what they provide as a collective unit. We, over the history of this podcast, have had 2 bars that we've held the team to. The throes of the rebuild, which is, are you better than the guy waiting in the AHL? That's not the bar anymore. You want to be a playoff team? You have to have the capability of a playoff team. And this bottom six is probably ahead of clearing the bar of the AHL standard. Yeah, Kasper's waiting there, but if you look at everybody else in the AHL, you can make a pretty coherent case for everybody in the bottom six that, yeah, they are still well beyond that. But if you hold that bar to what do the teams that are going to be on the fringe of the playoffs look like, they are falling well short to this point in the season. Only 3 games, which I don't think we've prefaced yet. It's only 3 games. Lots of time for things to change. Lots of room for improvement. But they've got 1 goal collectively through 3 games, I think, or something like that. They haven't been threatening. They haven't exactly been elite defensively, although I wouldn't call it poor either. So yeah, what's the bar here? And to me, it's like, if you're looking at the Ottawas, Pittsburghs, Washingtons, Buffaloes, hell, maybe even Tampa or Boston start to fall a little bit. Like these are the teams you're competing with. That is now the benchmark, and that is the level I'm holding them accountable to. If people view this as a rebuilding year, still, okay, we can shift the goalpost, but that's not where we should be at.
Something also I think important to remember too is, remember how we said the kind of identity line for Detroit is going to be deployed. Like that is going to be, you're not asking them to win, you're asking them to mitigate. Like we allow that grace for Seider, so I think it's important to include that context too. Like if they're going out against the Crosby of the world or the McDavids, whoever, they're not going to come out plus, period. And so I think for them, what success looks like isn't going to be represented as successful in the stat sheet, but you also have to remember who they went up against and who else on the Red Wings could do it and that kind of thing. So that kind of context is important, but I do see what you're saying, Brad. To jump over to things that are going well, Let's start with Simon Edvinsson. Now paired with Holl, he saw success last year with Petry. Is Simon Edvinsson perfect? I don't think so. Like he's far from perfect. He's a young defenseman in the NHL who is being asked to do a lot on both ends of the ice. And so he's making his mistakes and, he has his warts, and it's all anything that you see so far. Nothing's concerning. It's the kind of thing that a defenseman does grow out of and learn over time. But just the fact that he is this active already and making this many impact plays any given game and doing it, like, I think Holl's been just fine since he's come up. I've actually really liked his game and how simple he's kept it. But Justin Holl is not a defensive partner that shelters his rookie partner. Like, Edvinsson is doing this with very little help, and it's worked extremely well.
You could tell he's getting some confidence too, because I've noticed he's been activating a lot more with the puck on his stick. He's kind of doing the opposite of Holl. He's not just defaulting to the simple play now. And I know we're only 3 games in, but he stepped up in the O-zone, walked a couple guys. If he's on the breakout and he doesn't immediately like his first couple reads, he's not afraid to skate with it for a little bit. He's not afraid to send a home run past the length of the ice to the far blue line if he sees it there too. Again, he's a rookie defenseman for all intents and purposes, and he's made some pretty dumb rookie mistakes through 3 games. But again, to repeat conversations we've had throughout the rebuild, I can take the mistakes if the positive value they're providing is that much more. And that's definitely where we're at with Edvinsson through 3 games.
There's been 2 sort of elite moments I've noticed so far with Edvinsson. One was in the home opener. It was the second period, and he walked the blue line with Sidney Crosby right in his face. And it's like he made the play like nobody was there. And he's just cool, calm, and collected. And one of the best players ever, staring you down, looking for a mistake. And then last night he made a great play off the wall too, which ultimately led to a fantastic chance for Raymond, and Shesterkin was waiting right there, of course.
So annoying, man.
But he's making those plays against one of the best players ever and one of the best teams in the league. So defensive lapses aside, the Lafreniere goal, he kind of tried to block a Panarin shot, which ended up being a pass. So it didn't look that great, but I am 100% okay with guys like him making those mistakes because it's all going to be part of a learning experience.
We say a lot, defensemen need like 200 reps, like 200 games to really kind of mature, understand how to defend in the NHL. It's a skill, but it's also, you have to learn how to think the game. The speed changes, the level of competition changes. And unless you're a goalie, like that changes more for defense than, I guess, just saying forwards here. So the fact that he's able to be this good already, I don't want to tie him to the Mo Seider rookie season because that was a rapid ascension and then he was Detroit's best defenseman and often best player. But I see shades of it, and I see a lot of things that inspire me to think that the preseason conversations of if Edvinsson can just do this, then the Red Wings are in a lot better spot is happening or will happen here. So kudos to Simon Edvinsson. And I do think Justin Holl, who we're going to talk about now, a lot of his success so far has been because Simon Edvinsson has been thriving. It sounds silly to say, but I think he is carrying his bearings a little bit here. So Justin Holl in his return has been steady and
can you imagine?
Completely fine.
Pick any amount of time ago, whether it be 2 weeks, 2 months, or a half a season ago, and we are having this conversation right now.
I would have believed it. It's also
really?
Stupid. No, I would not have believed it for a second. No,
but I agree with you. Like, he is keeping it extremely simple. He's staying within the bounds of reality for his skill set. And last night, he made a great play that led to the opening goal for the Red Wings.
He's not, I want to be careful to not say like he's going to come in and be Detroit's second pairing right defense. He's going to be great all year and he's going to keep his way up. I think we said recently, like him going down and the disappointment in him, a lot of that is because of the contract. Term, AAV, mainly term. And that's the disappointing part. Is he serviceable as a 6'7" defenseman? Yeah, I think he was even last season for most of it. There were points last season where you're like, no, he doesn't deserve a spot in the lineup. But right now, what he's doing is he's simplifying his game. He's playing his game. He's not doing too much. He's using his frame. He's not trying to kind of step outside his lane, and that's all the Red Wings need. They need a steadiness. And between him and Petry, like, they've struggled. The Red Wings have flat out struggled to get that from them. So I don't want to sit here and say you can predict that all season long from Holl, but God, if they can get it sometimes between Holl and Petry, that would be not a big boost. It's your third pair or whatever it might be. They're often playing higher up than that. You just can't have Gustafsson, Holl, Petry, etc. all not playing well, right? So that just steady, simple. That's all you need. And good on Justin Holl.
It makes life easier for Edvinsson because that could be part of the reason why Edvinsson feels a little more comfortable activating now in the offensive zone, because he knows Holl's not going anywhere. And I mean, we want to say simple plays while he's wheeling around the ozone setting up buzzer beaters.
Well, it's simple for him when you're an offensive dynamo, but yeah.
No, but it is true. Just defend well, get the puck out when you have it, let your rookie D do what he needs to do, and don't blow assignments. Make life easy. Because if Edvinsson doesn't have to leave his post to cover up your mistake, it's a hell of a lot easier to play D.
The funny thing is, we're talking about how Holl was good, and then the next day he was sent down to Grand Rapids, and you saw some replies. They're like, why not waive Petry? Why are you sending Holl back down? He was good. A couple things. First, Petry has a no-move clause, so he can't be waived. And so unless that has gone away, that's not going to change. And with Justin Holl, you assign him down to Grand Rapids because the Red Wings didn't play Tuesday, and they're not playing today, Wednesday. They're not playing again until Thursday. And so you assign him to Grand Rapids, which means a portion of his cap hit is buried in the AHL, which means you can accrue more daily cap space because, again, the NHL salary cap is calculated daily, and you accrue space. It stacks up over time over the course of a season. And so it is an advantage to you to do what the Red Wings did as long as there was no on-ice repercussions to it. The next day, Holl got assigned down with Watson, and the next day, today, Holl got called back up. So Watson is still a TBD. I think it depends on Fischer because with practice today, Tarasenko was out. He was under the weather, took a maintenance day. Holl and Gustafsson are both expected to play, Derek Lalonde said. Petry still seems day-to-day, and Fischer is also a maybe. If he's ready, he'll go, but if not, Detroit could call up a 12th forward, which is presumably Watson. So that's why you're still seeing that kind of cap accrual gymnastics happening right now. So that's what the Red Wings have upcoming, because on Thursday night, they have a rematch against the Rangers, 7:30 p.m. Eastern at home. Again, that's Thursday, October 17th, and they are also another rematch against the Nashville Predators on the road on October 19th, before we're back with you next episode.
Key part of the schedule on Thursday, as Jonathan Quick has been announced as the starter.
Thank goodness. Although I don't want to tempt fate there.
No, somehow he'll give up even less goals than Shesterkin did because they managed to get one on him.
And he was good last year, so it might be.
And I think
I hope it's not the same story as last night.
I think I did see Talbot starting for Detroit as well.
And Talbot is indeed starting for Detroit. So the schedule, okay, can we talk about this? The schedule for Detroit's not easy. Pittsburgh, I mean,
they're playing well this year.
Yeah, it's not a bad start for them, and goaltending was better to start than I would have imagined as well.
Who or what is a Yoel Blomqvist?
Well, Detroit found out. Nashville twice, even though Nashville is not exactly at the top of the league right now, they still have the weapons. They have the Rangers twice. They have the Devils, the Islanders, and Buffalo, whatever you want to think about them. Then they have the lowly Oilers, who just now got their first win. The early points matter, but you also have to remember this is not an easy October. There probably are very few iterations of a start to the season that look easy for a potentially wild card team at best. So I want to call that out. But Detroit, if they want to scrape together some points here, it's going to be a little bit of a grind.
I mean, through 3 games, if you would have told me the Red Wings were 1-2, I would probably say that sounds about right, and that they beat Pittsburgh and lost the next 2.
Yeah.
So I think it all has sort of come out in the wash to start the season.
Okay. More on the Red Wings in a little bit here. First, we are going to hear a word from the sponsors of the Winged Wheel podcast. This episode of the Winged Wheel podcast is proudly brought to you by Labatt Blue Light. Created in 1983, this premium light Canadian Pilsner is a delicately balanced beer brewed with Cascade hops and a blend of malt. It's fresh, crisp, and brewed to the highest quality standards. There's a little bit of Canadian kindness in every sip of Labatt Blue Light. How did it get in there? They're Canadian. That's how. You can spread the love yourself by sharing a Labatt. And when you do share a Labatt, you're not just sharing a beer. You're sharing an experience that'll pair with anything from hockey to a hoedown. So next time you're watching hockey with your buds, be sure to share a Labatt, because while you might not all root for the same team, although we on this podcast do hope you're rooting for Detroit, you can all enjoy a Labatt Blue Light. We honestly love going to games in Detroit and seeing Labatt being the beer that fans clamor for all over the arena. It's a reliable beer, and it's great to have in your hand when celebrating a goal. So head to the link in the description of this episode or the one you see on your screen to find Labatt in stores near you today. You must be 21 or older, and as always, enjoy responsibly. Okay, time now to jump to our conversation with Daniella Bruce. Really great to hear from her. It's been too long since we had her on the show. Talk Red Wings, talk the celebrations with the Tigers, and the other cool stuff she has coming up in the works with the Wings and the players and some other notable people in the Red Wings organization this year. So without further ado, enjoy this conversation with Daniella Bruce of the Red Wings and the Tigers. Daniella Bruce, back on the hockey side of things. Welcome back to the Winged Wheel podcast. Loaded question, but how was your summer?
Well, as you can see, I can't even talk yet. So that tells you how my summer was and how my last few weeks has been. My summer was awesome. Being a part of this Tigers team was just a small part of it. Believe it or not, I did get to enjoy some family time and do some things with my friends. I had a lot of weddings to celebrate this year. So summer was really, really good. And the end of the baseball season was also really exciting. So a lot of good things.
So the question I have to ask you, that I think you are probably the only person in this space who's qualified to answer. How good is it to have beer in your hair? Is it actually like a conditioner, or was that a mess to clean out after celebrations? No, I'm not even kidding.
So full disclosure, I'm sure most of the people have heard me say this at some point. I wear clip-in extensions and I have them in, and they also got destroyed by beer. But I'm telling you, after I washed them, I was like, they have never felt this good before. So all the girls out there that wear clip-in extensions, or guys, if you wear clip-in extensions too, the beer was super helpful. Like, it was great. And there was one night in Houston after the celebration where I just didn't wash my hair because we were all going out to dinner, have a few celebratory drinks. So I was like, I don't have time to wash my hair. So I just curled it with the beer in there. It worked nicely.
I saw those pictures of you in the celebrations and the videos and stuff. I'm like, that is one of the hardest sports photos I have seen in a long, long time. That was very cool.
Yeah, it was very, very fun. And I hope we get to redo it on the hockey side later this year.
Fingers crossed. Very fun. It's the benefit of having someone like you in both spaces, because we get to kind of, for people who are more hockey focused like us, we get to still live vicariously through our friends. But now that we are back focused on the Red Wings and you had all of like 36 seconds off, the season has started. The off season kind of played its way out, and we knew what the Red Wings are going to come into the season with. What's the vibe? What's the atmosphere like after a Red Wings season where they were so close to making the playoffs, and now there is a lot more expectation on this version of the Red Wings?
Well, and I think they feel that in a sense, right? They would be not human if they didn't feel the expectation, but I don't think all of that is external. I think most of it is internal, because when you get a taste of something like that, and any athlete will tell you, you don't want to come close again. You don't want to miss it again. You don't want to feel the way they felt after that last game in Montreal. So I think there is the internal expectation of, we're going to learn from that. We're going to build on that, and we're going to continue to get better each and every year. And they have done that in small doses over the past 5-6 seasons. So if they can do that again, that should put them in a playoff spot. But I think the biggest thing that they've learned is that these early points matter, right? We're sitting here in October and we're going to get into November and December and be like, oh, we're not even at the halfway point yet, but each point matters. And I think that the experience of last year taught them that you have to play each and every game like it is a sort of elimination game, like they were at the end of last season.
So the Red Wings over the offseason, they lost quite a few goals. That's been the story of what a lot of people are talking about. You know, the goals out, 70 whatever, versus what's come in, and Tarasenko and others. You know, there isn't really a Shane Gostisbehere replacement. Is there kind of a internal team focus to try to replenish that from within, or is it more of a, well, we're just going to be a different team, better team defense, we're going to focus on goaltending, or is it not so black and white?
I think it's a little bit of both, and it's very hard to put that in black and white, like you just said. But I think what you're expecting is Lucas Raymond, can you do what you did last year at the very least and maybe take another step in your game and be that 30 plus goal scorer? Can Dylan Larkin stay healthy for an entire season? Because if he does, we're probably having a different conversation right now. So if he stays healthy, he's in that mix. You want Tarasenko to add a little bit. You think you're going to get more from Patrick Kane after having a full off season. I think everybody would expect that. And I think Alex DeBrincat is a little disappointed with the year that he had from the offensive front. So you really are looking internally for your guys to take another step, to know what they lost and to hopefully be able to make up for that. But at the same time, this team's focus has always been being better defensively. And that has to be something that happens too. And when you lose a guy like Shane Gostisbehere, you're losing a lot of offense, but we gained some defense with Erik Gustafsson in there. He's solid. Justin Holl has also been pretty solid through the last few games too. And I know people were questioning what his role was going to be on the team. Albert Johansson has looked like he's fit in there nicely. And you expect Simon Edvinsson to take some leaps. I think goaltending is still a little bit of a question. We saw a great performance from Cam Talbot, but how is that all going to play out in the future? And with Ville Husso being waived and he's in Grand Rapids, very well could still be in the mix of things. So unfortunately, I do still think they have some question marks to figure out as the season goes on, but I think they fully believe that they can handle what they lost in the sense of they have a lot of internal talent and they should be better defensively too.
If I was a better friend and a colleague, I would have introduced you as Daniella Bruce, broadcaster for the Detroit Red Wings and the Detroit Tigers. But putting that out there, Daniella, I always acknowledge the fact that you have such a unique and fantastic pulse as to what's happening in the room. So thinking about guys like Mo Seider and Lucas Raymond, who they had their contracts, those went right down to the wire. How have you seen them step into the room this season differently than previous years, where before it kind of felt like, happy-go-lucky, these kids are coming in and shining, and now it's like, hey, they earn their paychecks and they feel a bigger responsibility to succeed and grow on the team?
It's interesting, and I think we're going to talk about this, so I don't want to give too much away, but we just recorded our first 2 episodes of The Conversation Line, and Lucas Raymond was one of our guests, so stay tuned for that. It's going to be incredible. He was awesome, but just talking about for him some of the nerves that came with it this offseason and going through his first contract negotiation, even though most of it is handled by the agent. Him and Mo were in contact all summer, just, to kind of get through that together. And a lot of the energy that they bring is still the same, right? There's naturally some more pressure on them, which Derek Lalonde has acknowledged that when you get paid like that, when you get contracts like that, you want to be a leader and you want to be able to help this team. And they're going to give them those opportunities throughout the year, whether it's wearing the A or whatever it might be. But they don't want to put too much pressure on them. They need to go out there and be themselves. That's the key, right? And you've seen that for the most part so far this season. Lucas Raymond, Mo Seider are very happy-go-lucky. They are very energetic people, and you don't want that to change, right? Because you have to bring that aspect to a locker room as well. So far, I think they're handling everything great. And as the season goes on, they will feel some of that pressure, but I think we'll see them naturally fall into bigger leadership roles.
You mentioned Derek Lalonde, and to me, when we talk about him and his expectations for the team, I also think about the external pressure from fans. We saw on the home opener, fans weren't happy, but partially because of what happened on Woodward earlier in the day, which was a bummer. But the Red Wings fans have an expectation of success more than they've had really in the past decade. Is that felt, do you think, by Derek Lalonde? Is that felt by the team? How much more kind of pervasive is that in the team's ethos, or is this something that they've always kind of just applied on themselves internally as is?
Yeah, I mean, spoiler alert, Derek Lalonde is our other guest that we recorded with today. So we touched on this a little bit, and he brought up that home opener, the game against Pittsburgh, and that wasn't their identity. Derek Lalonde doesn't get mad. He stays on his even keel for the most part, but he said he got a little heated after the second period of that game and just chatting with his team and being a little bit more stern with the way that they need to play. He commented on how intense training camp was, and he really thought that was going to carry over into the first game. But as far as expectations go, it's internal mostly for them. Of course, they feel the outside. They understand what everybody's saying. They understand what fans want. They understand what fans saw last year and how close they came. But it's more of an internal thing. And Derek Lalonde is very confident with the group that he has in his room. We've had conversations where he's like, I've heard all this talk about regression. I truly don't see that. I don't see the fact that we're going to be getting younger and that we're going to regress a little bit this year. He sees a team that can go and compete for a playoff spot just like they did last year. So I think in the sense of feeling external they hear it, right? Again, they have social media. They see it. They hear it. They know what fans are saying. They know what media is saying, but it has to be a focus of what internally is going on if they want to find that success. And I think they will. They have one of the toughest schedules in the league to start off the season, which is, it's not an easy thing to do. And that's not to make excuses. We saw what they could do against Nashville. It's definitely there and they're capable, but it is a grind to get through. And hopefully they can come away with a few more wins and move on to the rest of their schedule.
I promise I'm not trying to spoil everything with the conversation line.
No, this is teasers. I love teasers. I'm a sucker for a good teaser, so it's great.
Let's move the conversation to the kids that you've been talking about, starting with Simon Edvinsson. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of what the Red Wings' success that might come this year from different places starts with him, fair or not. What have you seen from Simon through preseason and now the start of this season?
You know, it affected everybody, but what they went through at the end of last year, I think really resonated with Simon specifically. And he talks about it a lot, just how that feeling sucked. Like that was one of the worst things he had to go through as a hockey player. And he took that as motivation into the summer. You've heard the stories. He's gained 11 pounds. He's eating avocados like he pops candy, right? So he was really motivated to get back and get better than what we saw last year. And I think that's the attitude you're seeing from him right now. It's just that he knows that he's got to play a big role on this team. And you're right, whether it's fair or not, a lot of the youth movement starts with him. A lot of the steps forward are going to start with him. Not going to end with him. There's a lot more that needs to fall into place, but he needs to be the player that we all know he is. So I think he feels that, but I think he enjoys that. I think he kind of thrives in it and he's ready to prove that he can be that guy.
You can't really scroll your timeline. You can't really listen to more than a few seconds of a podcast right now without hearing Marco Kasper's name.
Yeah.
Speaking of another kid, what did you think of his performance to pretty much effectively justify a spot, even though if it didn't work out for him right away in terms of roster logistics? What did you think of Marco Kasper as a player, how he grew? And do you think it's only a matter of time before he's on this roster?
I think it is. I think there were just some, you look at the roster and the team that we have right now, it just didn't make quite as much sense for him to be in that position right away. And I think we've seen Steve Yzerman, when Lucas Raymond came over, he made the team, right? I think there probably is something that they want Kasper to work on. Go back to the AHL, focus on XYZ, ABC, whatever it is. And then once you figure that out, then you're going to be ready. Then you're going to be ready to take that next step. And that's probably what he's doing. If I had to guess, and I haven't talked to Marco since the decision had been made, but if I had to guess, that's also not going to leave the best taste in his mouth, feeling like he did have a really good camp and he did prove that he can hang in the NHL and then didn't make it. He's going to want to go crush it in the AHL and prove that he belongs on this roster and that he's able to hold a spot in the NHL, not just come up for injury. He wants to be a guy that's going to be a staple, and he's going to be. Don't get me wrong. He is going to be, but he probably feels like he had a good camp because we all saw it. He did. He had a really good camp.
Yeah. I want to leave enough time in here to talk about the conversation line. So last item for me, predictions. So I say last item, but it's a big one. So your Daniella Bruce crystal ball, you see what's going to happen in the future. What are your predictions for this Red Wings season in terms of point totals? And the big one is playoffs, yes or no?
All right. I think this is a similar team. I think they did take a few steps. They added some pieces. Like I mentioned before, they still have some things to figure out, but I think we're going to have a very similar experience to last year where it's going to come right down to the wire, where they're going to be in a mix. And the question in which I don't even want to predict if they're going to get over that hump or not, because I truly don't know. But I think that this team is going to play differently down the stretch because of the experience that they had last year. And I think we're going to find ourselves in April. We're going to be end of March too, watching those standings just like we were last year, because each game could be a new team in that wild card spot. And I see that happening again in the East. Competition is still as strong as ever. Division still pretty strong. So I think we're going to get a very, very similar year. And hopefully this time, with the experience that the team got, they're able to come up with the extra 2-3 points that puts them over the top.
In the early 2000s, we had Datsuk, Holl, and then either Boyd Devereaux or Henrik Zetterberg. That was the two kids in an old goat line. Mm-hmm. And I looked at the new Red Wings own podcast that you're hosting, the Conversation Line, and I think that's the two old goats and a kid line because it's you and the two Kens. So first, Ken is probably going to kill me for saying that, but tell us about the Conversation Line podcast.
Yeah, so it's going to be a combination of any of the three of us, mostly me along with one of them, depending on both of their schedules. We know they both travel a lot, so we have to be conscious of that. The first 2 episodes will be me and Ken Daniels, and The conversation line is the goal of this podcast is to, yes, obviously talk hockey. We're not ignoring that, but we really want to get to know the person, the player a little bit more, talk some more in-depth conversations about where they're from or their pasts or just different types of conversations that might not drum up in other types of aspects. Like when I interview a player for a pregame, it's very game focused, very hockey focused. We wanted to get away from that a little bit and bring out some of the personality, understand the player a little bit more as a person. And I think the first 2 episodes did that very, very well. So everybody's going to be excited about that. And it's not always going to be a player. I should say that too, that we're chatting with. We had Derek Lalonde, obviously a coach. We have a wonderful front office here that we will probably get in the chair a few times throughout the season. And hopefully we get some other conversations that are around the organization too. There are a lot of interesting jobs and different things that run this organization that people don't know about. So we really want it to be informative and fun, light conversation, and hopefully everybody learns a little something each podcast that they listen to.
Very excited to tune in. The conversation line with Daniella and the 2 old goats. Be sure to tune in.
One of the Kens each time.
One of the Kens. And last one here before I let you go. How's Charlie?
Charlie's great. I wish I was at home so I could show you, but I am at work right now. I'm in a nice little Bear conference room wall at Little Caesars Arena, but she's great. She's very happy that mom is home for a little while and not traveling all across the country. I still haven't broken the news to her that hockey season has started too, so I might not be home as much as she thinks I am, but she's great. She's been the best and she hasn't left my side since I've been home. So it's been great.
As usual on the Winged Wheel podcast, all that matters is our 4-legged friends. Yeah. Folks, Daniella Bruce at Daniella Bruce _ on Twitter, Instagram as well. You can find her and be sure to look forward to her reporting for the Red Wings, the Tigers when they kick off again in the spring, and on the conversation line. Daniella, excited to have you back again in the future.
Thank you.
We didn't even talk about Marco Kasper getting into a scrap.
No, we didn't. That's my fault.
He's that man is out there to just check every single box the Red Wings put in front of him.
Oh, I heard you need team toughness. Why don't I punch this guy's face in?
There's nothing like he's just gonna force his way onto this team. Every time he punches a guy, he's just gonna look up at the box up there where the Red Wings brass are sitting.
Dark horse for first Gordie Howe hat trick of the year.
Oh, that's a good one. I think that one might hit. That's a really good call. You're gonna regret not putting some cash down on that.
Now it's gonna be like Justin Holl is going to get it.
Damn right, brother.
That'll make next episode exciting if that does happen.
Do we give away a jersey of the first person to get a Gordie Howe hat trick this year?
Sure, why not?
Let's do it.
Oh, what would be the funniest jersey to give away now? I want the most ridiculous jersey possible. Justin Holl may be the answer.
Alex Lyon.
I was thinking goalie too.
One other piece that's relevant to Detroit sports, the Red Wings. This has kind of been in the works for a while. The details have been fuzzy, but it looks like it's happening quickly now. Bally Sports Detroit is changing its name and branding, and that's it for now, to FanDuel Sports Network or something to that effect. Essentially, FanDuel is taking over the branding. It doesn't change anything for Bally customers. It's just you're going to see new branding, new name, and new readouts and things like that. But as of now, that's just what it's been, a network transition that's been happening for some time. The whole thing with Diamond Sports Group and that whole bankruptcy process, you've heard a ton of rumors as to what it's going to be, but FanDuel has stepped in. I think it's also worthwhile to keep an eye on what Amazon does in this space. You've seen the NHL talk a lot about them, the success that they've had with the new show, taking over a portion of streaming for NHL games, and they're going to want to, it seems like they want to be a player in the space, and the NHL, I hesitate to say they have this figured out, but they seem to understand that streaming is a big part of rights packages in the future. So they'll want Amazon to be in the fray and they'll want to drum up that interest. So the regional networks have been such a sticking point that I wonder how streaming steps in the future. But for now, expect to see FanDuel Sports Network. But other than that, no other immediate practical changes for Bally Sports Detroit in terms of content, production, or what customers see. Let's jump into NHL news. Do we start with the goalie goal or do we start with magical amulet? Because I don't know which one.
Dealer's choice.
You can't be 100% certain one didn't lead to the other.
Let's start with John Tavares. How do I even intro this?
When I read that tweet 3 times, and I am not a big fan of reading, but I had to read that 3 times to make sure that I actually read what I saw correctly.
So without going into the details, because trust me, they hurt. And if you can avoid reading this thread or more information, I do encourage it for your well-being. But it seems like this, I don't have no other way to describe it other than a magical amulet. That's what it's being advertised as. That's being hawked out to the world, that it blocks energy and
I'm trying so hard not to laugh.
destructive. Like it was Russell Brand, and it's all this big loony thing.
Yes.
Anyways, I saw it pop up. I'm like, wow, the world is insane. Haha. And I was like, this will never jump into my life or world again. And then apparently on the website, John Tavares is listed as one of the company that makes this, someone who uses it. A magical protective amulet. The jokes write themselves. Like, Leafs fans have to just like cringed so hard when they saw this.
Sometimes when you try to debunk a product, you have to really get into the weeds, get into the stats, the research, the scientific papers. This guy plays for the Toronto Maple Leafs. All you have to do to debunk it is just gesture broadly.
Former captain of the Toronto Maple Leafs trusts magical amulet to protect him from bad vibes or whatever. It's like stupid.
If that's what John Tavares wants to do, then by all means he can. I just never thought that is a tweet I would read in my life.
Every day the world gets weirder, and hockey is not immune to that. This is like, remember when we read the whole snake dispute with Robin Lehner? This makes that look downright normal.
Yeah, this is very next stage of the progression of weird.
I do look forward to his 3 a.m. infomercials.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, and it might come out that like he was erroneously listed or whatever. I haven't been able. You can't really look into it without losing your mind. But he is listed on the site, and he's going to get asked about it at some point. So I wonder what's going to come of it. I bet it's all going to go hush hush away. But it was extremely funny to see. Okay, more importantly, because this is objectively the best thing to happen in hockey: goalie goal. Philip Gustafsson for the Minnesota Wild scores a goalie goal extremely early in the season, too. I love goalie goals. I want more of them.
The fact it happened so early in the season has created so many hilarious stats that I absolutely love. I think he's got, what someone said, he's got more goals than McDavid, Stamkos, and Ovechkin combined or something like that.
What did he say after? He's like, I want to get in on the power play meetings.
Yeah, they should put me on the power play.
I want a Red Wings goalie goal so badly. I wish that Ned could have got it when he was on Detroit. Like, when a goalie goes for goalie goals, that's all-time dude move right there.
I love when they run by the bench, too. It's just so good.
Yeah.
Oh, I have one actual gripe with that. So obviously you guys saw the highlight. When he was running the train up the bench, one of the most unique experiences in hockey, watching the goalie lead that train, and they just focused on Marc-Andre Fleury sitting there instead of him for some reason.
It's the league's obsession. Look, Marc-Andre Fleury, I get it. He's a legendary player. He's like one of the best people in the league, period. But the league's obsession with him,
it's insane. Like, this is a classic situation of everybody should love Marc-Andre Fleury because he's such a lovable dude. But the way people react around him and about him is what makes it insufferable.
I just think it's because he's overrated as a goalie. I think he's a perfectly good goalie.
We're going to fight today.
Yeah, we're going to do it again.
He's a perfectly above average goalie.
If Marc-Andre Fleury's name was Igor something from Kazakhstan, he does not have this level of legend behind him. I'm sorry.
Well, it also is because he's an all-time dude.
He's an all-time dude. Top of the list. Absolutely.
I'm going to bat for Marc-Andre Fleury right now. I can't believe I have to do this, but I will, because I would bet, I don't know what I would bet. We could come up with something interesting, but I guarantee you he's first ballot Hall of Fame.
Well, I agree. Absolutely will be.
Oh, well, he's bad, though.
Oh.
No, I don't want to do this right now. I don't want to do this right now.
No.
I don't want to do this right now.
Here's what I will say.
The Hall of Fame, notably.
We're talking about goalie goals right now.
He is if we're talking about in his prime, in his career, Marc-Andre Fleury is all day, every day, an above average goalie. Nobody's saying he's bad. Nobody's saying he's average. But he gets put in the same tier as Lundqvist and Luongo and Shesterkin and Price, and he absolutely does not belong there.
No, it doesn't matter. He's going to be first ballot Hall of Famer.
Yeah, the Hall of Fame, famously good at putting in people who deserve it when they deserve it.
He'll be the
typically on their first ballot, yes.
He'll be the goalie geek carbon.
When it's like, oh, we got to find the guy who's been eligible for 15 to 25 years.
Oh man. Oh.
This is
we could do hours.
This
we
is
also
all my
could,
fault.
We could do hours on this. I really think
anyways,
we could.
They took away Gustafsson's moment to put the camera on Fleury at that moment, and it upset me way more than it should have.
Goalie goal. As you just start like banging the table like it's a Wolf of Wall Street chanting goalie goal.
We should start that at the LCA every time the other team pulls their goalie. If the Red Wings are up by one, just goalie goal.
Yeah.
Just get it in Talbot or Lyon's head that, hey, buddy, now's your time.
Just go for it. So with the Ottawa Senators, I heard before the LA Kings game that Ullmark wasn't going to play, and I thought, ooh, tough for them early on. And then I got a notification that was like Forsberg got run into. He's out of the game. Their emergency call-up is now in. Not e-bug, but their emergency call-up for the game to back up Forsberg is in. I was like, oh, I wonder how that game went. 8-7 overtime win for Ottawa. 8-7.
First glance I got at the score of that game, I think it was when it was 5-5, and I thought it was a glitch when I saw the little 2 next to the period logo there, and I went, oh, this game's goofy.
Yeah. Fun, though. Very fun. So thank you, Ottawa and LA, for that. Okay. I want to talk about Lane Hutson because he is...
Can we not? Montreal media is doing that enough for everybody?
If anyone who's not a Red Wings fan thought that Detroit fans were insufferable about Mo Seider, holy is the conversation about Lane Hutson.
You say one bad thing about Lane Hutson right now.
They're crashing through the ceiling like the FBI.
Yeah.
And here's the thing. Lane Hudson's super fun. I really like Lane Hutson. And much like Marc-Andre Fleury, the way people talk about him is making me sick of him. I forget which game it was, but there was clip after clip of him doing objectively cool stuff. Like, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying he made bad plays on the clips that were being shown. And he was, juking and dancing through the ozone, and it was really cool. And the way they were talking was like, this guy is winning the Rookie of the Year this year. He finished that game with 0 points and was a -4. Like, what are we doing here?
He's a great defenseman. I think he's extremely talented. So fun to watch. I think the production's going to come, especially once he gets more power play time. He understands like how playing defense goes. And we liked Hutson as a draft profile too.
We were upset when the Red Wings didn't pick him in the second there.
Totally. Great. But if you think it's bad when an original 6 team like Detroit talks about their prospect, and then you hear about how like Leafs fans talk about it, and we talk about the Leafs as like the center of the hockey universe. I'm sorry, the level of passion, and I do mean the pun there, but the level of passion and like emphatic, like near manic focus on anything good with a team, no one touches Montreal when they're feeling it. And people forget that because they sucked for a while, and they're probably still going to be bad this year. But the moment they get anything again and they have someone of Hudson's talent, it is going to be a different stratosphere.
Wait till Demidov comes.
It is.
Well, that's already started. Don't worry.
It's going to be.
I've seen it.
Next level.
As bad as it got for guys like Kotkaniemi and as it was for like Slavkovsky at the beginning, and Reinbacher's feeling it now. The other end of the spectrum is the same. Like they amplify their great play. Like it is wild, and for a lot of people, it's going to be insufferable. It's good for hockey, like that kind of excitement. That's why when people are like, does it really matter original 6 versus other markets? Like, look, it's not that other markets are worse, but certain markets print money for the NHL. And this is a prime example of why. How many players of Lane Hutson's caliber would sell this many jerseys if they were on Columbus, Nashville?
0.
And I don't know what the current jersey sales rankings are, but I bet he's really high up on that list.
If Montreal was a team in the States making USD, the salary cap would be like $101 million right now.
Absolutely. Other NHL news, Rutger McGroarty assigned to the AHL. Again, perfectly fine for a player of his caliber. Just kind of a funny twist.
Is the team rebuilding or are they going for the playoffs? I guess we won't know.
Quick Red Wings related thing. Riley Sheahan retired. So
end of an era.
I will never forget that season. I thought he was going to go all 82 without scoring, and scores on game 82, scores twice.
Last game at the Joe.
Unbelievable. I've never seen a player more relieved in my life than him after scoring just the first of those two goals.
This feels like forever ago, but I'm still pretty sure I called him to score the last goal.
I think,
because it would be so funny.
It was hysterical. Good on you, Riley Shahan. Always a fun story with him. Okay. Final note here. I just want to acknowledge that was a really, really beautiful tribute by the Columbus Blue Jackets for Johnny Gaudreau.
And Florida was in on it. The refs, the league okayed it. And, we dump on the league all the time for obvious reasons. But tip of the hat to them to be on board with this. I thought it. There were a lot of grown men crying in the office today. I'll say that much.
Everything pregame you kind of expected, but then starting the game with nobody at left wing and then passing the puck to that spot and then letting the clock run down 13 seconds.
And it wasn't just they passed the puck to that spot. It was Sean Monahan winning the faceoff over to Florida Panthers player Sam Bennett, both of whom played with Johnny in Calgary. Like, it wasn't just two random guys. They had to make that gesture, which made it even more special.
Whether or not you're a crier or not, when you see things like that gets you choked up. The whole thing still seems so surreal, but yeah, I completely agree with you, Evan. The way they've handled this, that was a very, very beautiful tribute. Okay, on that note, let's jump over to the overtime segment on this episode of the Winged Wheel podcast.
We're going to overtime.
Overtime is brought to you by our Patreon supporters, patreon.com/wingedwheelpodcast if you want to support the show. Just revamped the Patreon. It's hopefully bigger and better and better rewards and going to be a better time for all of our subscribers who we so appreciate. And if you've ever considered becoming a patron, now is a great time to check it out. Again, the bonus episodes, all bonus content, the ticket giveaways, the Discord access, and lots more. So again, patreon.com/wingedwheelpodcast. Let's jump into some questions from our patrons. 155 Taters says, crappy quick hits. And boy, are they. Brunner or Leno? That's a tough one. Damian Brunner or Ville Leno?
Are we looking at only their time in Detroit, or are we talking a whole career?
Let's say Detroit.
Brunner.
I got Damian Brunner too. Although
Leno had the better career after he got out of Detroit, but
yeah,
Brunner was part of that magical 2013 Cinderella team that almost took out the Cup champs.
This one's good. Timo Pulkkinen or Martin Frk?
Frk.
Yeah, give me a Frk bomb.
Yeah, the fact that he got that this isn't for Detroit, but in LA, I think it was their own mini All-Star game.
I think he was in the AHL All-Star competition. He set the all-time hardest shot record.
That was, he could. I understand Pulkkinen had a blast too, the Pulk cannon, but Frk, I think, a little bit more, but it's still close.
He almost hit 110 with a 70 flex stick. I can't even begin to describe how insane that is.
Jonathan Eriksson or Andreas Lilia? I'm going to go Andreas Lilia.
I think I'm leaning Lilia too.
I think I am too.
Yurko or Svechnikov?
Svechnikov.
I'll go Yurko. It's not by a lot here.
I was going to go Svechnikov as well.
That's a depressing one. I have to tell you, I hated that question.
Fun.
No, that was not great at all. Give Wallman the Heart says, I'm very uninspired by this bottom six. You have the 5 of the same player and Berggren stuck without a role to play. This team is being carried by the top line. Never thought I'd say that, but I think the philosophy of the entire bottom 9 needs a shakeup. What line combos would you like to see just in the spirit of trying things out? You can include Kasper in this because obviously we all want him up. Also, last thing, I'm traveling from Boston tomorrow to watch my first Wings game at the LCA. Let's get a win. Hey, congrats. Whatever the team does, it's an incredible venue to go see a game. So have fun. Hopefully you bring some good luck. But what lineups would you want to see? So what line options kind of jump out to you?
The way this team's constructed, there really isn't another good option here. And it all comes down to 5 of the same player being painfully accurate. You can only shuffle that so many ways. And I am not putting Kane or Tarasenko down to play with any of them because that's just furthering the problem.
I would want to see I'd want to see how Kasper does with the maybe identity line, depending on if Fischer's hurt longer term. Rasmussen's had a slower start. Maybe something energizes there. I don't really. Maybe Kasper and Berggren together, I think would be cool to see at some point.
If we're factoring in Kasper, I wouldn't mind seeing what him, Veleno, and Berggren look like. Because at least then with Veleno and Kasper there, that's a lot of speed. So it could work in theory. And then obviously Berggren's good in the O zone, so he can distribute the puck as needed. But I would be curious. I wouldn't have super high hopes.
Wizard of Osgood says with Gustafsson sitting in the press box, Sherratt has been on the second power play, which does not look good. Shocker, how does Edvinsson not get that opportunity? He's a better playmaker, better skater, just all around better with the puck. I think part of this too is you have to understand what's being asked of Edvinsson right now. It's kind of one step at a time. Not that Edvinsson can't do this in future, but do you really want to thrust him into that role? Like if Gustafsson, finds his form. He played one game. Like he looked bad, and I think he deserved to sit, but he's played one game, so let's not write off his entire season. Because ideally, the two people running your power play, if you're going to assign defensemen to that, are Gustafsson and Seider. So is there really a purpose to throwing Edvinsson into that spot when he's still getting his feet under him? 40 games into the season, I'd be singing a different tune. I'd say, yeah, let's see how he does versus Sherratt. But to me, I think it's still early.
I don't.
You would do it now?
I would do it now. It's second power play. He's going to get 30 to 45 seconds. And, let's call a spade a spade. As far as on ice pressure goes, power play is one of the lower ends of the pressure spectrum, right? Like you're probably not going to have to defend seriously. Hopefully the transition defense isn't a thing and you're just cycling around the O zone. And when we're talking offensive skill set, Edvinsson versus Sherratt, yeah, it's not particularly close. At least it's not close enough where there's a good reason to have Sherratt there instead of Edvinsson.
Avery Sloppy Second says an unsolicited update from a hockey fan in Arizona. Games involving Vegas, Utah, and Colorado are all blacked out on ESPN Plus as we are considered a part of all three media markets. Wow, lucky you. Vegas is hosting both ice and street hockey clinics here this weekend, and even Chance the mascot will be in Gilbert for a watch party. I've invested in a set of rabbit ear antennas, but I'm addicted to hockey. The casual NHL fan isn't. I guess my point is that in 2024, blackouts are stupid, and customers should at least be given the option to pay an additional fee to be exempt from them. Losing a team is terrible, and I hope it never happens to anyone else. We have been beating this drum for a long, long time. Aside from the whole ordeal debacle that happened in Arizona, like blackouts. Every time I talk about, broadcasting rights, people much smarter than me point out, there's this kind of legislation and that kind of broadcasting hold that this company has, and they want to sell ad space and blah, blah, blah. At the end of the day, you need to make it viable for your consumers. The NHL has a desperate please like my sport stance because they don't want to fall behind the NBA or the MLB or the MLS or whatever. And yet you still have a region full of fans that you want to come back to. They always say Arizona is an untapped market with too many people to not come back to. And you're not letting them watch any hockey game because of blackouts. Blackouts shouldn't exist, period. I don't care what the legislative reasoning is behind it. It should not exist. And here you are, you have different teams vying essentially for the Arizona market, and they can't even get the games on there. So stupid.
It's just archaic legislature from a bygone era. People and how they consume media it changes rapidly. It changes every month, it feels like. There's no need for it. The NHL is struggling to keep pace with the other leagues. There was data put out that the WNBA semifinals had better viewership than the opening games for the NHL. They need to make their product more readily available so that people can watch it how they want to watch it.
It's not a hard sport to sell. Like, it's really not a hard sport to sell. It's not like it's slow. It's not like, getting Americans to like soccer.
Two of the slowest sports in the world are two of the most popular in America.
It blows my mind, man. It just absolutely blows my mind. Maybe this next iteration where the NHL kicks over to streaming services more so for broadcasting rights within the next 10, 15 years, maybe that'll change things, but I would not holding my breath.
I know the monkey paw is going to curl when I say this,
yeah,
but I would love teams to take stronger control of their viewership and how it's broadcasted out to consumers. I think there's probably some interesting creative ways that they could do that while, making sure advertisers and marketing companies get what they want as well.
One last note here, which is an important one. Cody Stark says, was hoping you guys could share the passing of one of my best friends, Chad Demers, after a 6-year battle with brain cancer. He was 33 and leaves behind his wife and 3 children. He was my teammate and scored the game-winning goal to win the 2008 North Dakota State Championship and left high school early to join the Fargo Force of the USHL, where he scored 65 points. He was their captain his 3rd year and then joined the Air Force Academy, where he played for 4 years, amassing 126 points and was captain his senior year. After his diagnosis, he was medically discharged from the Air Force and pursued his coaching dreams, being the assistant coach for the Fargo Force for 2 different stints, was the director of scouting and player development for 1 year at Air Force, and most recently was the assistant coach at Division I Augustana University. He was the smartest hockey mind I ever knew, and I have no doubt he would have made it all the way. I will miss him forever. Our thoughts and our hearts go out to the family and friends of Chad Demers. Thank you for sharing that, Cody. And with that, we are going to wrap this episode of the Winged Wheel Podcast. We're going to be back with you Sunday night. Thank you all so very much for tuning in. I'd like to thank our sponsors and the supporters of the Winged Wheel Podcast, the Black Blue Light, and all of our other sponsors. To all of our new listeners, welcome to the show. And if you're a listener of old, thanks for hanging in with us and listening for however long you've been doing it. We think you're insane, but hey, so are we. And if you want to support the show and go the extra mile, patreon.com/wingedwheelpodcast. It really, really, really does help. And if you want to support the show, but Patreon's not for you, what you can do is subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, whether it be Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube. And if you want to subscribe on multiple, that's a big help. Leave a rating, the thumbs up on YouTube, the rating via Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever, and tell a friend about the show. All that is really great ways where you can support the Winged Wheel Podcast. To all of our name level supporters on Patreon, we could not do this without you. Arjun Shankar, Yves Bartels on behalf of the Sarah Grand Foundation, Aikfer, Samuel Soderholm, Icon, Alexander Hansen, Victor Zetterberg, Ghost of OSBP, Glenn Brabham, Croner's Left Knee, Ashley Whitehead, C. Lyon, Matthew M. Rice, Adam Rose, Adam Zowiza, Admiral Matt S. of the Cheesebag Navy, Asher Killian, Carl Brutana-Nanaluski, Carl Provi, Citizen High Five, Clip Clop Nene, Connor Scovey, Craig Kibble, Denny's Gamer Girl, Derek Enstam, Seider, Dickens, formerly Marlon Winchester, DJ Denton, Drew P. Wang, Eric Hill, God Creatives, Give Blood Fight Probert, Goose Looney's Drinking Club, Hockeytown Love, Hockeytown Matt, Hassam Al-Qassem, Jay Gollum, Jacob Turner, Jeff Pridemore, John Engels, Jonathan Miller, Kaylin Wood, Marcus, Marty, Matt Keeler, Matt McKay, Michael Edlund, Mr. Kuzi, Putty, brand new name level supporter, R.A., Raul Pud, Riley Enright, Ryan Britt, Scott Martin, Skeletor. That's what I appreciate about you, the new Jackson 5 Holes, Wallman's Elite Dancing D, Winged Boogie, Yzerman Stan, General Andy Bohan of the Cheesebag Army, Sam Bankson, A.A. Ron, A.B., All Motor No Hands, Ann Stanislavski, Axel Sandy Pelika, Bellingham Acid Balls, Bex, Chimkim Nutgits, Commander Ben Barron of the Cheesebag Space Force, Connor Layton and Corey Prida, Darren Fick, Datsukes Dangleberries, Dylan Larkin, Trade Sacrifice, Eric Nance, Frank Stanley, Gene Sullivan, Grepsky, Griffey Boy, Huge in Korea, James Pridemore, Jeremiah Dobo, Jim, J.M. Rhapsody, Joey Jojo Shabadoo, Josh Yelton, Keenan O'Donohue, Brad is Wrong and Plays Like Sprong, Casper the Unfriendly Ghost, Kevin McCracken, Quaz, Les Grossman's Ungodly Firestorm, Linda Hull, Lucas Raitmond, Ophelia, Proud of You WWP Boys, Ryan M., brand new name level supporter, Steven, that other guy, the Hodag, the Hat123, Trent Thorough, Wings fan in St. Louis, Scott, and your second favorite patron. Thank you all so very much. Talk to you Sunday.
Thanks for tuning in to the Winged Wheel Podcast. Be sure to visit wingedwheelpodcast.com, where you'll find links to subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. You'll also find ways to support the show, like Patreon, official podcast merchandise, and more. And don't forget to follow us on X at Winged Wheel Pod, at Ryan Hanna, WWP, at Brad Crisco, and at Hockeytown Evan, as well as Winged Wheel Podcast on Instagram.